It's FYF Sports, man. It's Lamont. We are back. Another podcast episode, man. Y'all see the title of the video, man. We got to talk about it. I think when NBA players start to collide with us content creators on social media, I think it makes for some of the best content. I think this is what makes us content creators on social media far more valuable than what you might see on ESPN, far more credible than the Fox Newses. It's just a better. And I think when they collide with us, as opposed to colliding with mainstream media, that's when you get not just the best content, but I think you get the best basketball discussions. Before we get started with today's video, make sure y'all go check out Dubby Energy Drink, man. Dubby Energy Drink right here, man. They got new flavors out, man. Use code FYF Sports, man, for 10% off. The link to purchase any of your Dubby Sports Energy products is in the description of the video. I mean, it's made for content creators, right? We need to stay focused. We need to stay locked in for long live streams, long editing sessions, right? If you're a gamer, long gaming sessions, right? If you want to stay focused, if you want to stay alert, it has all the ingredients necessary so you can stay locked in. Make sure y'all check out Dubby Energy Drink, man. Link is in the description of the video. Y'all go check them out, man. But we got to talk about it, man. Obviously, this has been the talk of the town. Legend of Winning went on a rant about Kevin Durant for whatever reason. I think maybe he just didn't like where Kevin Durant was being ranked in certain people's eyes, certain standards being placed upon Kevin Durant for whatever it was. And a lot of times as content creators, I think we forget that we're saying these things on the internet. These are things that not just fans, but these are things that the actual players themselves can ultimately end up coming across. Now, NBA players come across the content a ton. But it's rare that you find NBA players coming across the content, coming across random takes, and then not just responding like he originally did, but then also jumping into the live conversations so they can give some pushback to your thoughts, your sentiments, your basketball knowledge, your intellect. And if you're not on your P's and Q's, and if you don't have everything aligned properly, I think these guys can come into these circles and really make your takes look bad. This happened on FYF Sports most recently, man. Obviously, when we were talking about the Carmelo Anthony, is he one of the greatest scorers of all time? We had tons of casual fans coming in with these takes revolving around winning and losing. Had nothing to do with him as an individual player, as an individual scorer. And then when the NBA player in Gilbert Arenas comes up, and he brings truth to the matter, and he speaks on Carmelo Anthony as an individual scorer and says that and then you have the casual fans just sitting there looking crazy, because then how do you computate that? How does that work in your brain when you're talking to somebody that's done it at the highest level? They speak on it at the highest level, right? And it's rare that you come across these guys that actually have been on the same court with these guys, and they both were playing at their highest levels. So, I think with Kevin Durant right here, and we talk about this a lot here on FYF Sports, man, I think he was just tired of hearing all of the BS. All of the BS logic, narratives, standards. It's all BS. And we're going to talk about that later. Let me go ahead. Let me play the short. I'm just going to play a short snippet of their conversation. But I think what Kevin Durant said here, I think this was probably the most impactful statement that he made. It resonated with me and a lot of the takes that I have here at FYF Sports, and it's actually one of the points that I try to emphasize to people prior to them creating certain lists with flawed criteria. But let me go ahead and get to the short. You guys check it out. Let me know what you think.
I just think how y'all even look at the game is whack as playoff success. Like you factor in team success when you talking about players. I just think how y'all consume the game is trash. Like, are you good or not?
I agree. I agree.
I mean, some things could be that simple. Are you just good or not? I mean, a lot of people have seen it for a long time, brother, and it's okay. These lists don't really mean nothing anyway. So why you getting so upset about them?
All right, you guys heard it right there, man. Kevin Durant, really, really challenged a lot of people. Not, I don't think he just directly, and I think Kevin Durant, when he said this, he was talking to a lot of people. In this conversation, obviously he's talking to Legend of Winning, and salute to Legend of Winning, a guy that we've had on the channel as well multiple times. But I tell people, when we talk about these players, and a lot of people say, "Oh, Lamont, you're giving these guys a pass for losing," and what I like to tell people is that you don't get to the highest level, and not just the highest level, not just get there, but you don't get to the point where you're looked at as the best of the best at the highest level if you have not been extremely superior to everyone else with regards to what you do individually. And when we look at Kevin Durant, as an individual player, you will be hard pressed to find 20, 30, whatever number you want to put on it. You will be, and if you're just talking about today's NBA, you will be hard pressed to find any number of players that you can just say are better basketball players than him. And I think what people like to do, and this was done also in that Carmelo Anthony conversation, is what people like to do is they like to conflate the team aspect and mix it with the individual. A lot of people that really haven't played the game, what they like to do is they like to put all of the team successes or failures on the backs of one player. And what that does is it convolutes the argument on both sides. It convolutes the conversation for the player that won and you give him all the credit, and it convolutes the conversation for the player that lost and you put all the blame on him for losing, as opposed to talking about these guys as individual players. All right. And we've seen this harm a ton of players, especially players like guys like Carmelo Anthony, or what we've seen from Kevin Durant recently, who have been thrust into situations where they've been able to excel individually, but the team around them has not been enough. I think one of the weirdest takes, and I heard a guy really ranting and saying this on another platform, but he was talking about Kevin Durant, talking about how he failed and he choked in the playoffs this year. Yet when you go look at Kevin Durant's numbers and his productivity, and you actually go watch the games, the man was averaging in the playoffs 29 a game and 8 rebounds. That's great for your best player. And I don't think no coach in the world will run to their best player and say, you're the blame, when that player's putting up 29 and 8, as opposed to going to the others, the rest of the team, saying, okay, what more could you guys have done? Like when you look to that Phoenix Suns team that Kevin Durant was on, right? Where's the ire and blame for a guy like DeAndre Ayton, who clearly played far below what we've seen him do in the past? All right, where's the smoke for some of the others, the role guys that played far below what they normally were supposed to do? Right, and then was there any consideration for the fact that their starting point guard, and Chris Paul, was also injured, and that took away from their chemistry and cohesion and an ability to compete at the highest levels? How do you contextualize these things, right? And why do people bypass those conversations? And why did they just run and jump to blaming the star player, irregardless of any context that needs to be added to the situation? And I think that's all these NBA players, all they're asking for. And they're not asking for much. They're just asking for a fair shake. They're asking for fair consideration. I don't believe Kevin Durant is opposed to criticism from fans or the media when situations and circumstances are optimal. But when you can clearly see certain situations, like with the Brooklyn Nets, where certain people would claim that the Nets had a super team, on paper, yeah, they had a super team. It was super. James Harden, Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, on paper is super. The unfortunate reality of it is that things on paper don't always unfold and happen on the court. And what we saw during this entire tenure with that supposed super team is we saw a tenure of James Harden being injured. We saw a combination of Kyrie being injured along with suspensions and him taking time away from the team. And what we never saw was that super team actually step on the court and play together so that we could criticize them or give them their credit justly if they won or succeeded. So when the circumstances around you changes, I think our level of expectation from you should change. Now, if you want to judge his individual performance, if Kevin Durant comes out in the game and he shoots 2 of 25 and he's completely inefficient and he shoots 8 points, right, 7 turnovers, and he just plays otherworldly bad as an individual, I can understand you criticizing that. But this is not what people are criticizing. People criticize Kevin Durant for the shortcomings of an entire team, an entire organization. And I think that's where people's basketball acumen starts to really show that it's limited. Unfortunate reality of Legend of Winning just being in the wrong place at the wrong time, and the weaknesses of his logic really and truly started to show in that regard. I try my best when I go into these debates, and I try to stay consistent with these guys when I tell people, be very cautious in regards to combining team success with individual success, because your success as a player in regards to winning and losing games can have a lot to do with others. The construction of the team, the coaching. You know, I love using James Worthy and Dominique Wilkins as the prime example. Dominique Wilkins, as great of an individual player he was not drafted into an optimal situation, and thus was left off the first created NBA top 50 list. James Worthy, drafted to the Lakers, great situations, filled with championships. Media loves him. He's in LA, gets added to that top 50 list. Even though individually, one could easily argue that Dominique Wilkins is the superior player, especially in their primes. So we see how winning, team construction, coaching, and all those other dynamics can really impact what you perceive of a player as opposed to just looking at them as individuals. And I even said this about Carmelo Anthony in that conversation. If Carmelo Anthony was an elite scorer, one of the best scorers of all time, I said I really wish Carmelo would have never demanded a trade from Denver to Knicks. I would have wished he would have waited until he became a free agent and just signed with New York as a free agent so they didn't have to completely strip down their roster just to get him. I wanted to see Carmelo with a competent roster. I wanted to see him with a ton of talent and solid coaching around him, because that would be the best Carmelo we could see. That would be the best version for the fans. That would be the best version for the media, so that he could feel and address all of those media narratives and concerns, those fan narratives and concerns with regards to winning. But because he went to a Knicks team with a stripped down roster, he had to start from scratch. And he went through a ton of losing before he had a little bit of success. And now that stigma has marred his career. People don't look at him the same. One of the greatest scorers of all time. Now you have very casual fans coming on the podcast saying publicly that, no, he's not a better scorer than David Robinson. No, he's not a better scorer than, and it's just like, this is how much the media has blinded people. This is how much the media and media narratives have blinded people. For as much as people want to say that they hate ESPN and they hate the Skip Baylesses and the Stephen A. Smiths and they hate the Fox News and the Jason Whitlock talking points, they utilize those talking points and those standards in every conversation that they proceed with. That's the unfortunate reality of it. So that's why I really don't take too many people seriously when I hear them make eccentric takes and then the next day they want to get out and try to bash a Stephen A. Right? There are times to bash these guys. There's time to give those guys credit. But a lot of the people making these oddball takes on these players are not extremely credible. Not to say that Legend of Winning is not credible. Legend of Winning definitely has a lot of good basketball takes. I just think in this sense, when you start trying to rank and judge players and rank them on certain lists with criteria that's extremely flawed and biased, as KD called out, you can make yourself look silly in a basketball argument. And I leave people with this. I tell people in all these rankings, you want to go into any ranking list and understand that rankings are unfair, right? And I think Kevin Durant understands this. Rankings are unfair. And this is why he ended it by saying, well, it's just a ranking. Why are you so mad about a ranking? And I tell people all the time, this is why I like to categorize players and say, I think he belongs in this group of players from 10 to 20. I don't care where you place him. You know, you hear so many people get emotional about a Kobe Bryant. Oh, you have Kobe Bryant at 11 and not in the top 10. Well, it just to have Kobe in the top 20 is special. I'm not mad at anybody that has Kobe in the top 20. I don't care where you place him within that RAM or rank. You can place him at 3. You can place him at 8. You can place him at 15. But he belongs in a certain range. Where you place him and where you want to rank him is up to you. It's truly meaningless. And so for people who get so emotionally invoked by these rankings and these lists that absolutely mean nothing, most of the people that put the list together don't really take any true time to formulate fair criteria that calculates individual winning and then combine that with circumstances to create a fair list. A lot of people don't want to take the time to do that. They create these lists, they create criteria with biases usually targeted at a certain player to diminish a certain player while they uplift their own. We've seen this in the Jordan argument. We've even seen this with the LeBron argument. We saw it in the Carmelo Anthony conversation, and now we're seeing it with Kevin Durant. And that's the downfall, and that's the shortcomings of the basketball talk in this community. A lot of people are not fair, and biases creep in, and they kind of they just kind of murk up one's logic. It stops people from thinking reasonably. And then it makes it even more convoluted when you're dealing with a lot of people. For example, a guy like Mars on Player's Choice, who's never picked up a basketball in his life, but he's willing to open his mouth publicly and speak on the game as if he understands it on an intrinsic level, a level that only a guy that's picked up a basketball could understand. And not to say that these guys can't talk sports, but I think the guys that did not pick up a ball, the guys that never dribbled or played on any level, I think they need to be even more cautious with regards to how they proceed. I think they need to really do a deep dive into how they dole out criteria before they start criticizing guys, because there's a level. I think there's levels to this. And I think, especially here in the United States, you guys can disagree with me or not. I think all of us, our love for the game started, for all of us, our love for the game started with us actually picking up a basketball when we were little, right? Irregardless of how far you went, you might have stopped playing in elementary, middle school, high school, some D1 college, JUCO, whatever. But it all started by us actually picking up the ball, playing, understanding the camaraderie that you get from playing on outside courts, going to different gyms, LA Fitnesses, different pickup runs, early morning runs, basketball leagues, pro-am leagues. And once you start doing that, you start to look and appreciate the game on a different level. And I think the guys that did not do that, I think there's a level to the game, and there's an understanding of the game of basketball that they miss and that they lack that kind of irks guys that actually played, especially if you're talking about guys that played in the NBA. But you guys, it's FYF Sports, man. It's another great podcast episode. We will be back with more sports and news, but until then, it's FYF Sports, and we out.
Yeah. Smack. Yeah. Lola. Yeah. F your feelings. As far as sport podcasts out, we the realest. Hot takes, fact based. If we said it, then sign and seal it. Politically correct takes ain't what we give it. We do film study, we do live streams, we tough critics. We go against the grain. We in a different lane. If you ask me who to go, I'ma say it's James. We do fan view reviews, headline news while giving game. We do play-by-plays on our channel if you can't catch the game. All of the good debates that could be had, we the start of it. Don't challenge the person here, challenge the arguments. We love good debates, picking topics.